listening to the Project Ignite podcast,
where real digital entrepreneurs reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies to help you ignite and grow your online business.
ProjectIgnite.com. Your digital business starts here.
Now, here's your host, Derek Gale.
Welcome to another episode of the Project Ignite podcast, a podcast that just skips all the hype, the BS, brings you real entrepreneurs doing real things who are sharing actual stuff that you can take and apply to your business. This is your host, Derek Gale. And today we're going to dive into a topic that I think a lot of entrepreneurs might, glaze over, but is so dang important. And that is effectively the financial stuff that can make or break your success. And our guest today is somebody that is an icon, an entrepreneur that has been building 8-figure businesses for many, many years. He's a best-selling author. I'm going to get him to share his track record because it is massive, but it's his most recent, I guess, mission that I'm going to dive into here. And that is to help e-commerce, tech, digital business owners, our listeners, improve your financial fluency and get better at that whole accounting back office thing so that you can run your business like a business and maximize the profits that you're there for. So without further ado, Vinnie, welcome to the podcast.
Derek, thanks, buddy. It's so fun doing a show with someone who's got massive influence in our community and has been more than a colleague, a friend I've known for a while in this space. So these are always the most humbling and most enjoyable of someone that I've known a long time. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, it just ages us, but yeah, I mean, when did you give me your backstory? Because you've got such you've done so much, right? When did you come online? Give me your history here. Give it to our listeners.
It's funny. My kids joke with me, and by the way, not just kids in our house, but kids in the office, and they use things like OG. And yeah. I kind of understood the concept behind it, but when I really, with maturity, look at this space, I have to actually accept some of that because I've been around a while, right? And so pre-technology things, we invented some of the tech that people were using. And so, I was a lawyer. I am a lawyer, but I was a practicing lawyer. We're talking late 05 into early 06. I get introduced to a young lad who subsequently becomes my business partner in our digital enterprises. Well, I get introduced to him in an accountant-lawyer relationship in my law firm. Accountant introduces us. We sit down. He starts telling me about his work from home digital printing business where he would do electric downloads, which we now call ebooks or PDFs. And he did all this stuff. And I'm like, what is that? And he'd say, we use a URL. I'm like, what is that? Like, I didn't even know what a domain name was. And we're talking 06. Well, fast forward to 08. I own that business with him and we're killing it. We're selling more digital downloads per day, 7,000 change front end sales in 08, just blowing the doors off this thing. And we have sales floors and we're number one on ClickBank and we're like so far ahead of ourselves. We have hundreds of people on our team and literally we just didn't know what we didn't know. We were just going crazy at a time where the internet was whatever you wanted to make of it. And so people would accuse us of things like, yeah, you sell porn. And because they didn't know, right? They just didn't know what they also didn't know. And so we were just way ahead of it at that time. And, it's funny. We cycled out of one business into another, sold one, broke another, built this large web hosting together company. And then I broke that company in my arrogance of running something for me, not for it. And, that was the journey where it was rolling. And then I got into a large health supplement company and it's the maturity of business started to kick in because of a lot of the hits we took along the way. I started to recognize some patterns in my behavior and set out to change those. And so that set out to change is what really added to the level of maturity that I would bring to leadership in business now.
Okay. So how many businesses do you currently run?
I run one. I own 3.
Okay. Okay. So you own three. And these are three businesses that you've started. And right now you're running fully accountable. Is that correct?
I'm the CEO of Fully Accountable, right? And so I don't actually have any client engagement work. My job is to actually put almost all of my time into our executive team, specifically our COO, and I work on our brand. I am a junkie for the marketing and the copy stuff, so I don't get too far away from our marketing team. I love that stuff, but I duck out whenever I want to duck out, and I duck in when I want to duck in. And I'm also then the chairman of the board of the other two entities, which take away about each an hour of a month of my time. And then if things rise up where people freeze and those teams that are running those businesses need kind of Grandpa Vinny, maybe more than Uncle Vinny to kick in, I will still help support in those areas. But I'm really a leader of leaders at this point. I spend my time as the brand ambassador of Fully Accountable, but most importantly, I'm spending my time building up the us and we of the leaders of our teams.
Yeah. And, for everybody who's listening, I think that's kind of the holy grail of where you want to be as an entrepreneur, as building businesses, is to be able to get those to a point where you have those people underneath you that are running it the day to day. I mean, to say that you've got two companies that each take you an hour a month, that's amazing.
And by the way, one of them is going to do about 40 million in revenue this year.
Wow. Okay. So how did you describe the journey? How did you go from, because you were once the entrepreneur with your hair on fire, trying to do everything, right?
Yep.
And this is what I've witnessed over the years is it seems like there's not a lot of people that make that transition from the hands-on in the trenches entrepreneurs where they're the bottleneck for everything to becoming the leader of the organization. And so was there a specific point that was a light that came on? How did that happen for you?
I'd say it was a little bit more of a slow fade, but in fairness, I think the vast majority of people do not or have not or will not sign up for wanting to actually run an enterprise. I'm convinced the vast majority of people like to sell something or make something. And the structure and complexity of process and people is not something they want. And so they cycle out. It's actually something I wanted. I think because I might actually be inherently lazy, but I didn't want to do certain things twice. And also, I have a high emotional equivalent. Like, I just love people. I love the story of people. So I actually, as I've moved along and recognized my hero complex, I get more excited now about looking at the idea of legacy, that someone else is going to take this and run with it longer than I will. And so I've switched some gears from the success that Deb and I, my wife, would have in our category of wealth. And I'm in like this significance mode. And the looser I hold it, it's like that 38 Special song, hold on loosely, but don't let go, right? Like and you'll shoot to the top, but don't let go. Like, I still love being involved in our business. But it's funny, my wealth continues to increase as I really work on more of people and process than it does if I was like the guy grinding all of it.
And I think that's such an important takeaway for so many entrepreneurs that are at that point where they maybe keep hitting that ceiling and can't figure out why they can't get above that, is they don't bring in good people. They don't empower those people. And I've been there, I want to have my hands in every pot, right?
Bud.
Yeah. Like, I got to be involved. Oh, I have to do this. I have to do that. And, when you can make that shift, that's how you go from the $5 million a year to the 50 million to the 100 million. I mean, when you talk to,
by the way, listen, I want to be real to everybody. You're susceptible to this at all times. So a couple of things that I learned along the way: less than 7% of all operating businesses in North America do more than $1 million of annualized revenue. Wow. The problem is we run around with all those businesses, so we think everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
The switch of habit that got you there is not going to be the habit that gets you from 7 into deep 8 figures. Like, I literally did this to our web hosting company. I broke a $50 million company doing 4 million plus in revenue because I kept a 6-figure hustle offer mindset in the business. And I literally, the change of thinking about an enterprise into process and people and ultimately profit is something a 7-figure and 8-figure business needs to do. But all the habits that got you there, you think you keep those going, and making that shift is so stinking hard, but necessary if you really want something to grow beyond your shadow.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got a question for you, and we're totally going off a different path here. But you sort of said that hustle mindset. So what's your take on this whole generation of the hustle, and you gotta work hard and working 7 days a week, and I mean there's that whole kind of hustle mentality. What's your take on that?
I had to get right with my recognition of the religion of hustle. And I actually served that religion. And how I got right or recognized it was when I took my first bad hit in business. And all of a sudden, what happened is my identity was pegged in our success, my success. And when it got moved out of that category, when we broke that business, I all of a sudden started using awful language in my heart and out of my mouth about myself. And all of a sudden, I started believing that I could have grinded my way out of or into a different situation. And so the lack of success exposed this like working hard. I was just working unnecessary, that I believed in this grind it till you make it type thing. And it literally exposed me. And the interesting thing is, I was speaking to someone today, and as a matter of fact, before I hit record, we were talking about there are days and weeks and hours where you do have to grind it. But when it becomes like this religion of yours, you're going to have to eventually face the issue that will come short on that, because the more enterprise that gets complex, you are going to run out. The machine is going to overload and break if the grind of you is necessary for the growth of it.
Yeah. 100%. Absolutely. And that's probably one of the biggest revelations early on that I see with people is when they actually, you start off by yourself, your own small business, but when they hire that first good person and that light comes on of, holy crap, more stuff's getting done. I can work on higher value stuff. That's such a big first step shift, but getting to that next level where you're at, I think is again, I've seen it. I've seen so many businesses struggle to get there. So to see you've done that multiple times, I mean, just kudos. That's just huge respect.
Yeah. And hey, listen, do not allow me to allow you to believe that that's easy. I feel like I would do a disservice, but every day I wake up with the desire to go solve a problem, not make my bank account have more money. I want to solve a problem that's a real value proposition. The reward or the trophy, one of those is a category of money. It's not, I used to go chase the money and I lacked all the other part. And that's all of a sudden why people weren't on mission with me. Our culture sucked. Things were out of whack. We had the whole equation backwards.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Now, well, on the topic of chasing the money, let's shift gears and dig into that, because the last company you started is called Fully Accountable. And first of all, quick overview: what is Fully Accountable to? And then second, what inspired you to start this?
Inspiration. And so, what Fully Accountable is an outsourced e-commerce digital finance and accounting back office that provides controller and fractional CFO services to e-commerce and digital companies doing $1 million above in annualized revenue. Our team, you pay us to be the experts who run that function of your company. And so what I say, our motto is here: time, money, and resources. We're going to give you all of the information if you want to go yourself. If you want to buy back time and go faster at a fraction of the cost with experts, then you hire someone like us. Otherwise, what I'd love to do is have you get a link, which is fullyaccountable.com/podcast or excuse me, that's not it at all. Derek had somebody in the show notes. They're going to get /project-ignite-podcast. I'm going to give you every resource to go do it yourself. You should look to an outsource group as an accelerant where you fill in something today's environment is this idea where the brain could have so many elements of outsourcing. There's no excuse today that you can't fix this problem in your company. So what motivated me to do this? I'm not any of those positions I just named in our little commercial. I had a problem in our health supplement company. I didn't have any relationship to profit margin. And I went out to solve that problem. 6 years later, we have this thing.
Okay, so this is just a byproduct of you had the problem, you solved it, and now you see the need elsewhere, and here we are today. So, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about financial literacy.
Yep.
How do you define financial literacy for an entrepreneur?
Have enough cocktail napkin math to know the core issues of your business. Don't rely on someone else for that. You need to know the core things that matter to the type of company you have. So that health supplement company I kept picking on. When I realized it's what I keep, not what we make, that mattered. I wrote a book about it. So much so that I realized we were making 8% profit in that company, but I should have been making 22%. Well, that's a critical metric that I should know as a leader. What type of business I run? What is an acceptable margin of that type of company? All of a sudden, that 14% we were losing became important to me. I would like to know what's the average cost to acquire a customer? How long do they stick around? These are walking around metrics that exposed that I was too far away from important information. And what it exposed for me was that there was a language I was afraid of, because language in business is finance. It exposed, even as a highly trained professional in law and tax, I was afraid of words in that space. So I ignored them. I went out and just drove more sales. Well, do I have enough financial fluency to direct the importance of that part of our business? Is cocktail napkin necessary for leaders who are really trying to mature something?
Okay, so this is where I think a lot of people starting off kind of mess things up. Now, you started talking about some really important metrics there, your customer acquisition cost, all those things, right? So I think what happens is, you've got the entrepreneurs, they start their business, they hire a part-time accountant, and they get these things called financial statements.
Yeah.
And they look at the financial statements and then try and make business decisions. Now, what you were talking about there, typically you can't find in a financial statement.
So but that's fair. That's why I wanted to do something different, because my business partner now, who was the CFO of our company at the time, Chris, our About Us story is real. It's not Vinnie, the copywriter, making up some fun story. It's a real story. He came in my office with our financials and said, hey, read this and let me know if you have any questions. I literally threw it back at him because I didn't know what I didn't know. So I said, can you read it? Point out the differences so I know. And so we made an interactive P&L, a profit and loss statement, where we would see things that are different from before versus now. And it gave me some at least introduction to what might be wrong in the company, because I always knew substantively what to deal with. I just didn't know where math was telling me the problem was. So if I was over on labor so what we learned was that we could spend 39 cents of every dollar to acquire a customer in our health company. And when I saw that we were spending 43 cents, I was able to go find out which affiliates I shouldn't be working with because they weren't profitable to me anyway. So once I got some of the intelligence, I actually was equipped to go make better decisions.
Now, do you expect an accountant to give you that?
If they have the right tools in front of them and they understand the language of our thing, I expect our team to do that. I see a lot of people who don't know our industry. So yeah, they're not going to get that, but I do expect that actually. And so, our whole daily report, entire process is built around that so that they can raise their hand and say, you've had a fluctuation in your costs. You'll immediately go, oh my gosh, we hired that network. I'll bet you if we go and dig into the cost, it's going to be right in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I guess where I'm trying to dig to here is financials. When you hire, what you guys do, and what I love about what I'm hearing from you is fully accountable. You guys do this for digital businesses. So you guys are going to
Yep.
be able to present information in such a way that is meaningful to a digital business. Now, to share my experience, I've had numerous accountants and CFOs over
Yeah.
the years, and they will hand me financial statements and go, these are GAAP compliant, and they're great for, filing your taxes and doing whatever you need to do, but they don't tell the story of the business.
Well, we just helped a client fire us because the person internally was mad that we don't run GAAP compliant financials. And I didn't say this, but our COO did. We're like, that's not the point of running your business. This person has been trained or not trained in a way of presenting something that has nothing to do with your business. Well, they wanted to do it that way. So we helped them fire us because we're like, you're not.
Yeah, no,
that's
not it.
the way to do it. And look, these things need to be real, breathing, and alive. GAAP stuff is so old that you bled to death 45 days ago. That's not real in high transaction businesses. And we can do better. And that's why I get so fired up about that, because an old system was being used in a new world, and we got to really fight against that.
And so, and this is the rabbit hole I wanted to go down here, because I think for all of the listeners, when you go out and you hire your bookkeeper, your local CA, or whatever the designation is in the country that you happen to be in, and they put together financial statements for you, they're typically going to follow an old methodology that, and this is what I'm trying to get to, it's not going to give you the information and data you need to make the proper business decisions. And this is actually really, this is a fresh wound for me, because this is something I've gone through recently, right? And trying to dig through financial statements, particularly when you have multiple products, multiple channels, different countries, different merchants, it gets super complex, right? And so trying to drill down into the actual meaningful information that you need to run your business can be difficult.
Well, do you know why that happens? I actually figured out why that happens. Would you like to know why?
I would like to know why.
Because when we start out in business, we need the simplest of things. Our first move in business is to make sure twice a year we don't give all our money back to Uncle Sam or to the Canadian Tax Authority. So twice a year, we're only worried about tax. Then as the business gets more mature, we suddenly start worrying about other things, but we are always consumed about tax. So we don't even look to how the profit center of that business can help us in bigger things. We get stuck in this mindset that it's supposed to be only done at the end. So December and April is the only time we care about something that can massively impact the other parts of our business. And that's an old school thinking that we bring into that. So we don't give it any respect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. So now what I love about people like yourself who are working with lots of different businesses is you get this broad spectrum of stuff, and you get to see a lot. So what, if you had to list them out, or the top 3, 4 mistakes or problems when you get new clients coming to you, you look under the covers, what are the most common mistakes you're seeing in the world of e-commerce, digital business being made in back-ending, in accounting, finance?
The one that glaringly stands out constantly is 42% of all companies are overpaying to acquire their customer. And the direct and proximate cause of that is this thing that entrepreneurs have. It's channel envy. We want to be in all these places. We want to be in all these places. And it actually erodes a real issue. I don't think businesses are working hard enough to really tighten up and define their real audience. They want to sell to as many people as possible. And because of being in so many channels, they end up accepting an average blend of their cost. And what they could do is cut 1 or 2 of those channels off, and they could be massively more profitable, really dialed into their customer. And so we see businesses that have too many channels. When they could drive a couple of those channels deeper, they need to shut a few off. But it's such a retractive mindset that they want to be in those other places. That's number 1, far and away. Number 2, it feeds off of number 1, sadly. We will go burn too much of our cash trying to grow too quickly.
Yeah.
If we could solve those two things, because this dashboard 10x mentality, like we could there's so many young entrepreneurs that will just blow up. There's fiscal principles that I've learned along the way that says deploy 25% of your capital back into growth and keep the other part. In other words, they put some structure into it so that you grow intelligently. Well, we don't think like that. Youthful entrepreneurs, and we're going to go through an age of change right now. Because until this moment in direct to consumer, we needed to liquidate every dollar to get a customer because we needed to change the behavior of people. Well, now the world's changed that behavior for us. So we need to start changing our mindset to the profitability of that customer, no longer begging them to adopt to buying online, because that's a real thing now. And so now we need to switch gears to not liquidate every dollar. How can we make that a more profitable event? And we're working with the right customers and not trying to work with everybody.
Yes, that's actually, that's really interesting. And so, okay, so the channel envy, totally agree.
Yep.
So when you get into the business, how do you tease apart channels? Because one channel can feed another channel, and there's overlap.
Fair enough. Attribution, we get it, right? So if you're doing search and search is a big deal for you and you rely on retargeting, that's a pickup event of search. So those play hand in glove with each other. But if your audience is a geriatric audience, I'm just picking on it because let's say 55 to 70 or 45 to 65. Well, then what the heck are you doing on Instagram?
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
If your audience is all male, what are you doing on Pinterest?
Yeah.
My issue is that, not whether or not multi-channel doesn't support attribution. It's an audience problem, not a channel problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the key words you said there was attribution. And right now, you see a lot of different businesses, but we spent over $1 million on media last year. We're buying a lot of traffic. And right now, I think one of the biggest challenges that we face online when we're dealing with paid media is attribution and being able to effectively measure what a campaign is generating back to, back to the bottom line. And I would love to get your insight in this. I mean, just selfishly, because this is something that I'm buying ads over here. And I know if I look at my direct attribution, I'm losing money on those. But, I know that I'm also raising these other channels, and overall there's profitability, but it's really hard to measure and say, okay, this, this channel contributed this much, this channel contributed this much. How do you guys deal with that?
So you have to, like treating your health, you got to look holistically at things and not just take some medicine to treat the sugar at the expense of the liver. The same is true with traffic. Like back to my search analogy, like retargeting is a 10% lift on the customer. And so through exiting, and so we have to put some attribution back and recognize the value of a retarget. Where'd that click come from? So the more you can track a conversion event and understand it, and the more you can put some places where you can grab some of those things, you can directly attribute. It's really hard to say my SEO efforts, which took me 9 months to build, are causing these results. Well, I start to appreciate why someone might stick their brand on the side of a stadium. There are some elements that come along. And so a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of knowing better, a little bit of tracking some of it, and somewhere in there, you can make a little bit better decision.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, you've been on the internet for a long time. And, back in the early days, we're all very much direct response guys. And attribution was easy, and it was very easy to met because there's nowhere else to go or click, right? But I feel like we've now shifted to a point where, because attribution is not easy to track, because the customer journey is so different than it was, it's no longer linear, and it's getting longer and longer and longer, that we've now shifted back to a point where we have this odd hybrid of where we do kind of do direct response stuff, but we have to have that old kind of branding mindset of, hey, we spent this much on ads. How much should we kind of finish off with as well?
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of both. I think with great maturity, when you build something a little more complex, I think brand is thrown around a little quickly.
Sure.
I think brand is something you earn, you don't build. I think brand is something that's awarded to you, you don't kind of make up. I don't think it's a logo. I think an offer is converting and it's got traffic and it's got repeat customers, and you got to do things to support what it is for you're doing valuably and support your customer. And over time, brand attributes come out of that. So now at Fully Accountable, we get referrals and reputation and earned media and all these things. And stuff comes from different places. Well, what can we do to put some recognition and track that? That's brand value. What can we do to recognize some of that lead flow comes from those things, not other things? Well, I'm going to tell you, some of that is good old boy Kentucky windage. I got to figure out where the wind's blowing. And I'm going to have to live with a little bit of variance. But a lot of that is trackable. People just want to put brand characteristics a little early in the party. And I tend to get a little triggered on that. But
yeah, and that's fair. And I'm using the term brand kind of probably a little loosely and in the wrong context there, because you're right. A brand is something people have a relationship with. I guess more what I'm suggesting is we have X amount that we're spending on this direct response campaign. Our overall, sales lift for said product, right? And again, as you said, it's the Kentucky.
By the way, here's what we say here. If the things we can directly track can't justify us doing it, then how much do I have to make up an attribution to actually overcome that? If that falls out of the realms of what a percentage of attribution usually looks like, which is the way to really deal with attribution, then we got a problem. Like if I'm adding more, let's say I can live with a 10% overlap of attribution, and I can't necessarily nail down where that's coming from. But if I add back 10%, and I can't justify the campaign, then I have to do some major jump to Mars stuff to make that thing work. Now I got myself a problem.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we do. I do this all the time. Like, I want to run it because I know it's working.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know? Because I just know it is. Well, can you give me anything close? Give me close. Get me close. If you can get me close, I'm with you. If you can't, don't you want to ask better questions?
Yeah. Look, when I took over this company we were talking about earlier, to turn it around, the only way I've been able to turn this around is obviously a combination of better marketing and all the process, but it has been getting as deep into the numbers and what is going on and attribution and as leaky best bucket. I can. What's that?
Yeah. The leaky bucket. That was my first move, was to know what we have and where am I leaking? What things can I help effectuate and start to appreciate so I reversed the model in our business. Once I knew 22% was the number, I made that the bottom, and I made them show me the difference from what we should have made and what we were making, so that it fired me up to look at the leaky bucket and understand what mattered and what didn't. Now I get it. That didn't happen overnight. Well, we got to a 22% profit margin when we sold that business.
Yeah. It was there all the time.
It was there. I was just, me and the rest of the band of brothers and characters, we were justifying why the leaky bucket was acceptable.
Yeah. Yep. So, okay. So you said right now, Fully Accountable, you guys work with businesses that are doing $1 million+ a year. Was that correct? Okay. So prior to $1 million a year, because that's, you've made it a pretty long ways.
Yep.
Yeah. What are they supposed to do? How do they build financial literacy? How do they, what should they be looking at?
That show notes link I gave you, I'm literally giving you everything to do to how to go find a company to work with, how to do some of these things yourself, have a mindset built in a 6-figure business of the things you should be building now foundationally, so that as you get ready to mature, By the way, this is true of every aspect of your business. You might handle customer service internally during the early days, and then when it gets bigger, you look to outsource it. Every category of your business has a maturing to it. And so, yes, we can work with startups. Yes, we can work with smaller businesses. We choose not to because we are going to be more effective in another category of what we can do. And so go ahead and invest at the stage of your business. If you want to invest at the stage above your business, just know you're making that investment and why you're making it. But most businesses, you're maturing. When you outgrow a CRM, you look for another one. When you outgrow, it's every part of your business is like this. So you don't have the most mature version in any department you're always growing up. And so there are more cost-effective ways that allow you in the early days to devote some of your budget to parts like accounting and finance. So we're going to give you a bunch of those resources to help you get there.
Fantastic. And yeah, we will definitely include those in the show notes. And I would suggest everybody definitely check those out. And all right. Well, look, as we wrap this up, for the listeners, before we started recording this episode, Vinnie and I were talking about, the early days in our careers and how much money could have been, but wasn't because of the way we ran things. And the sooner you get a grasp on this, the faster you're going to grow. And we're in a more competitive market every day. And the one thing that I believe to be true is whoever can afford to spend the most to acquire the customers in any given market is going to typically win that market. And so if you want to be that person in your market, you need to be able to squeeze as much of the profit out of that market as possible. And what we're talking about here is squeezing the stuff that's already there. You just got to do it. And, I mean, I'm a marketer at heart. I love focusing on the campaigns and the funnels and the lead acquisition and all that stuff. But this is the stuff that separates the wannabes sort of from the big boys, right?
Don't take the pattern interrupt out of the pattern interrupter. I love to get people to pay attention to things that are clicky and baity and all that. It's got to drive into something. To me, I think there's two things. I think the value proposition, you need to really take an honest inventory. Are you solving a problem and is it valuable? Because you're on this hamster wheel if not. Two, what is your relationship to the money? If you don't believe in the value of what you're doing, you might do what I did and you go blow it all because you didn't think it was worthy of keeping around. There's that problem too. You may not be investing in your business because you don't actually align with a mission or purpose of that business.
So, and this gets more into, I think, the mindset around finance and money. And so how often do you start working with new entrepreneurs and businesses and clients and find that their roadblock is their mindset and relationship with money?
It's all of us. It's the thing for all of us. And so the ones that work with us and work through it, it'll start to unpack itself. The ones that want a 10x dashboard result to things will cycle out as fast as they cycle in. And I think that's the way of the business community. I think the path is narrow and a few walk it, and the rest of us go down a path that leads to a bunch of craziness up and down that cycle.
So so when you said the 10Xers cycle in and cycle out, we're in a due to some a certain marketer, we're in a big 10X, 10X, 10X. I mean, that's a thing, but you're talking about 10X like it's a negative.
I love it from a marketing clickbait thing. The marketer loves it. Like, I get it. It's actually not a real thing in business. It's a unicorn. So understand and embrace the marketing beauty of it, and then recognize the reality of how to grow and scale something requires a more temperate approach to things. And if we as the leader can't gain this attitude of maturity as we build along something, we're always going to fall susceptible to the rise and fall of the next gadgety thing that leads to 10X.
Okay, so everybody's just listening. What you just heard there was so important. This is coming from someone that's started, grown, built multiple 8-figure businesses. And, I love marketing. 10X is a great hook,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, I think that is setting an unrealistic expectation for a lot of new people that are coming into the business, into the market, who are like, I didn't 10X this year, I'm a failure. when
Amen.
in when in reality, that's not how you grow a business. I mean, it's just not. I mean, last year I was telling you, we had a tremendous growth year. We grew 50%, not 10x, 50%, and it was a crazy year. To
Yeah.
grow 10x, you couldn't
Now I'll
see.
tell you, younger, youthful businesses doing, 50 grand a month or whatever,
Sure.
their offer is gonna pop and they're gonna have a hit. But
Yeah.
when you have a multiple 7-figure business, them adding 50% growth, or an early stage 8-figure business adding, let's just say they're doing 10 million and they literally had 5 million of revenue. They just grew by 50%.
Yeah.
That is so massively disruptive to that company. There's so many moving parts that have to change. By the way, I love a 2 and 3x thinking. It's a
Yes.
stretch goal. It gets you
Yep.
thinking. It gets you excited. Embrace 10x, but bring it back down to 2 or 3x.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely invaluable advice, because there's a lot of hype in the market around 10x right now. So you just readjust your expectations and realize it takes time, and it's time well spent, because you'll build something that is sustainable. So on that note, first
Wrap
of
it up.
all, let's wrap it up. And you gave us a URL before. Do you remember what that
Best way
was?
to find us is at fullyaccountable.com. We created a specific page that'll be in the show notes that is for y'all. And you should go there. And that's fullyaccountable.com/project-ignite-podcast. And don't remember writing it. It's there in the show notes for y'all. And that's the best way to get started. And if you want access to me, you can find me at Vinnie Fisher anything. Those are my social handles. And really, we're here to put the resources in your hand to do this yourself. And if you want to speed up with experts, we're also here.
That's amazing. Well, Vinnie, it's been great catching up, and thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Now it's your turn. Like I say at the end of every episode, you can listen to these episodes and you can wander away and do nothing with it, but it's not going to make any difference in your life or business. So if you want to actually make something happen, take what you learned here today, even if it's just one action, apply it, and you're going to start to see real results. And as always, if you like what you heard here today, please leave us a rating, leave us a review. And for the show notes and the link Vinnie mentioned, head over to projectignite.com, find our episode and the show notes, and the link will be there. And that's all for today. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to another info-packed episode of the Project Ignite podcast with Derek Gale.
Any links mentioned, along with an entire transcript of this episode, can be found at projectignite.com/podcast.
And to make sure you never miss another episode, go to iTunes or SoundCloud now and subscribe.